Hello and welcome to the first video in the Let's Talk About series. In the first video, we're talking about accounting, and we're very fortunate to have Joanne Bell. Welcome, Joe.
Hiya, hello everyone. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. Now, Joe's recently had a baby, so if she falls asleep during the interview, we'll just be very quiet and let her sleep.
Very real risk.
Now, Joe, being an accountant, when I come across accountants at networking events and things, there's usually a type, when you see an accountant portrayed in a movie of this old boring person dressed in brown and carrying a briefcase and a calculator. And when I see people introducing themselves in networking events as accountants, and people's eyes just kind of glaze over. I mean, is there more to accounting, or is it just a whole bunch of boring number crunching?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot more to accounting if the accountant wants there to be. I mean, certainly there is the element of number crunching, looking at last year's figures, calculating how much tax someone's got to pay. But the real power of accounting is the opportunity to revolutionise that person's business and also the lifestyle of the person behind the business. Because if you can really get to grips with the numbers and understand the stories that they're telling, that means actually make decisions in your business around what you're being told, what products and services are the most profitable, what you should be focusing more on, what you should be doing less of. And of course, in the instance of a startup or a rapidly growing business that's looking for finance and things like that, the right accountant can mean the difference between success and failure, because they need to have that navigation board to make sure that they're knowing where they're going and what's happening with the business, and make sure they're avoiding any unexpected bills, things like that.
Well, because what I found talking to business owners now, I mean, we'll get on to what I do for accounting, which is very little in a short while. But when I talk to business owners and ask them about what do they know about their financial situation, most of them haven't got a clue. They haven't got a clue. And I'm not even talking about which products are the most profitable and things like that. I'm talking about overall circumstances like, did you make money on that job? We don't know. I mean, how do you find when people come and ask you for your services, do they know what's going on?
I think there's a bit of both. I mean, I certainly wouldn't want to say that everybody is in the dark, because we do have some clients who are very, very on the ball with their numbers and really do just need us for a year-end service. But certainly there are some that don't have a grasp. And I think generally those people know who they are. They know that they're a bit numbers phobic. But maybe if their accountant is not the right type of personality, they don't feel comfortable asking them to explain in more detail or asking for more information because maybe they feel a bit silly. I'm not sure. But I think definitely it's very important that you have a grasp on those things, and that can mean whatever it needs to mean for you. So sometimes that means converting things into graphs, so that they can get in a more visual way. If they're not a numbers-based person, that can be helpful. But yeah, it needs to be more than at the year end, really.
Well, that's it, because I think a lot of businesses will wait until the year end until they actually know what it is that they've done. Now, I mean, I'm one of those people that's on top of it and very numbers orientated. So I really just use my account at the end of the year. I send them the stuff, they do the books, it's job done. Otherwise, I don't really talk to them. But obviously that's because I know my numbers and other people don't. I mean, how important is it that you actually know your numbers throughout the year, not just at the end of the financial year?
I think the busier the business is and the more complex it is, the more important. And actually sometimes, unfortunately, it's the other way around. If someone's really busy, they don't have time to look at the numbers, or they don't have time to keep a track of it. And that's the time when you need to, really, because when you're busy, that's when your costs can escalate because you're just paying out money for convenience. You've not got an eye on what you're spending. You're maybe getting your taxes done at the last minute, which means there's unexpected bills because you didn't know as you were going along how much corporation tax you were going to have to pay or how much your personal tax bill was going to be. So yeah, I'd say the busier the business is and the more high growth it is, the more important it is to look at those things on a more frequent basis. But we do have some business owners where the business is pretty much the same year in, year out. Maybe they one-man band contractor, they just have a 6-month contract, a fixed day rate. They know exactly, what their costs are because actually they're quite minimal. And that type of people would need a lesser return in terms of the information we're providing. They wouldn't necessarily need management accounting because they haven't really got debtors, they've not got customers owing them money that they need to keep a track of, or they're not got creditors, suppliers they're waiting to pay, so that their cash flow is very, very straightforward. But there are some surprisingly very, very complex businesses that don't have a high level of information, and they don't realise that some areas of the business are more profitable and therefore they're carrying the others, the other elements of it. Or the other major part where they go wrong, I think, is debtors, because lots of people see that the job ends at the point they raise the invoice, and because they're not tracking when they get paid, we then present them with their profit figure at the end of the year. This is how much profit you made. Oh, but I don't have that £20,000 in the bank. Where is that money? And 9 times out of 10, it will be because the customers haven't paid them, and sometimes they've not even realised that that's the case. So that's another area that's very important to keep a track on, that making sure that your invoices are getting paid.
Because like my books, I'm one of those consultant types who just charges, I don't charge per hour, but effectively that's what I'm quoting on. So for me, there's no stock, there's no depreciation of anything. It's fairly straightforward to do. Even I know which jobs prove to make more money and which ones don't, and which ones I should then be quoting more on, and what size jobs tend to make more money than others. And I analyze that kind of data so that I know next time what to expect and what to go for. But as you say, there's some bigger companies that have a lot more at stake who actually don't understand their numbers at all. And if it weren't for their accountant telling them what was happening, they wouldn't know. Whose responsibility ultimately is that? Because you as the accountant, is it your responsibility to go and tell them, or do they ask you for it, or how does that work?
In terms of legally, it's absolutely the director's responsibility, and that happens a lot. I've got contacts through networking and insolvency practitioners where businesses go wrong, for example, and it always comes down to the director. And sometimes they'll say, "Oh, it's because my accountant didn't tell me," but ultimately the director is responsible for everything, for the filing of the taxes, and which to some extent I think is a bit unfair, because we're paid to do a job. We file a client's tax return because they don't know how to do it or don't have time to do it. So they have to place trust in us to some extent to say, well, we trust that they're doing it correctly. But in the eyes of the law, the responsibility is firmly on the shoulders of the director. So you can't say, well, it comes down to your accountant. But we see it as part of our duty to go to the client with the information we think they need or would be beneficial for them to run their own businesses, mainly because I think it's difficult to know what questions to ask. If you don't know what's available or what can be done in terms of analysis and information back, then it's difficult to say, well, could you do this or could you do that? And if you don't have a particularly analytical mind as well, you might not actually realise the significance of it. But as I say, it does tend to be the busier, more complex businesses that neglect those areas, and those are the areas where it's most needed. For example, if you've got a building company who's got 3 or 4 projects on, it's very easy to lose track of the costs, because you're going into Wix, you might be buying 3 or 4 items or 3 or 4 different builds or different projects that are going on, and there's no way you can analyse that in your head. You can't know what those costs are, and you might think, well, it's just £100 there or it's £200 there, and the overall invoice is 10,000 or whatever. But it's very easy to spend all of that money and not realise that you've done so just by spending £100 here, £100 there, and not keeping track of it.
Well, because that's a lot of the stuff that I do analysis for. People always, one of my pet hates is whenever I meet someone at a networking event and I tell them I make spreadsheets, they're 9 times out of 10, the comment back to me is, "Oh, so you do spreadsheets for accounting?" I say to them, "No, I don't do spreadsheets for accounting. But I do a lot of financial analysis," and it's that kind of thing you're talking about job analysis and breakdowns and really getting into the nitty-gritty. Now, you mentioned earlier that you deal with some of those things with your clients, but that's not normally let's say most accountants won't go to that kind of detail, will they?
No, that's right. And I think the reason for that is that there's a difference between compliance accounting and management accounting. And actually very few people are both. So if you go to college to learn how to become an accountant, they will teach you tax. They will teach you how to fill in a tax return. But even that knowledge is within a year irrelevant, because unless you're a regular CPD, every time the budget comes out, all the tax laws change and you've got to be always up to date with that. But that is a very different skill to the sorts of analysis that you or I would do in terms of management accounting. It's actually a whole separate qualification as well, which is not required for a person who does tax returns, but is required for someone who does management accounting. So there's not always the experience in both, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say. And I think maybe where my strength comes in is because I am a business person myself and I've grown my business from scratch. I've learned by my own experiences and what information did I need. You know, we're a practice now that runs off 4 different sites. So there would be no benefit in someone saying to me, well, this is the total sales you made in a year. I need to know what every individual site made. I need to know what each individual person within that site made, what each department made. So we'd have payroll, bookkeeping. That's the only way I am able to make decisions in terms of, are we charging enough for our services? What departments are making money and what are not making money. So the way I do my own bookkeeping and the information I need back influences what I advise the clients. Whereas I think lots of accountancy practices, they may be very straightforward, one site, 3 or 4 accountants and an admin person. That they maybe have inherited that business, worked their way up within it, so that they've not gone through a sort of high growth trajectory where they've had to really keep a good grasp on it. So they maybe don't know what that's like as a business owner from the other seat, but it is a very, very different skill set, definitely.
Because I mean, I've most of the accountants I've met have always just kind of said, send me your paperwork, I'll do your year end, and that's it. You're on your own, and that's why I think I get a lot of people coming to me saying we don't understand our numbers. I mean, I've got clients who sell various products on various platforms, online platforms. And then when they discovered that the fees were different on all the platforms, they then realized you can't sell the products at the same price to make the same margin. And, you know, those kind of things, if you don't ask those questions as a business owner, no one's going to come and tell you that. And, you know, you've got to be on top of that. And I mean, I like you, okay, I'm not qualified as an accountant, but I've got that head for numbers. And I think a lot of business owners just don't. And that's why they need a good accountant. But then they end up going for the accountants who just do the end of year books and leave them.
Yeah. And I think it's a shame because it's very interesting. Like, all right, the analysis itself or doing the numbers is not the. That's why they might employ someone like yourself or I to do that legwork, so that it's really easy for them to input the information and get out the other side what they need. But the results and the outcome are very interesting when you realise as a business owner, oh, actually, I make my money there, or if you find hidden money, like you say, you realise that actually if you up your prices by £20 per job, multiply that out by the number of job you're doing, and suddenly you realise that you could have bought a red Ferrari with the difference, and that does interest people, because if the numbers don't, the outcome of what you're able to tell them to do with small little tweaks in their business. You know, nobody really, if we're honest, does business purely for the love. And even if they do, then they still need to make X amount of money to enable the business to. So the numbers has to be really high up there in terms of priorities. But usually it's their why behind the numbers. It might not sound interesting to them to make an extra 10 grand a year, but if they convert that into what they could do with the money or what difference that would make to their families, that's what's interesting.
Because I mean, I posed a question to, it wasn't actually a client, it was someone I was talking to a while ago. I said, then what would happen if you doubled your margin? They said, well, we wouldn't sell as many. I said, yeah, but how many would you sell? Would you sell 60% of what you're selling before? And they said, probably about 70%. So I said, so you do realize if you double your margin and sell 70% of what you were selling before, even if you lose 30% of your clients, you're still making more money doing less work than you were before, which means your overheads could invariably come down and all the rest of it. And they kind of sat there looking at me like I was speaking a foreign language. And I'm kind of going, a lot of people don't know these kind of things. But I mean, I've never been trained in that. It's just common sense. But well, apparently it's not that common talking to a lot of people.
No, that's right. People just assume that in order to make more money, they need to sell more, not actually look at the more profitable areas or how can they make money. And I think that's even more apparent in the service industry. In products, it's easy to work out because you know, well, I sell my product for this amount, I buy my product for this, that's my margin. But when you're talking the service industry and you're just exchanging your time for money, the thing to remember is that you have finite amount of time. So you could literally work out, well, if I'm selling my time at this amount per hour and I've got X number of hours where I'm available to work, I will never be able to earn more than X. And the other way to have an impact on that outcome is to increase your prices. And yes, you might lose some customers for that, but ultimately, exactly as you say, you're doing less work for more money. So that's a far better outcome than running yourself ragged, trying to act for 20 different customers when actually you only really have capacity to serve 10 well. But you need to increase the budget to incorporate that.
Well, you either need to charge more for your time, or you need to find a way to produce the same results in less time so that you're actually charging what you were but spending less time on it. But again, it comes down to logic and looking at that and actually trying to figure out what you need to do.
Or generating more income from the same customer. So you'll see that done very, very effectively by big companies, and that's the Costa mentality or whatever. You'll go in there and order a hot drink and they'll ask you if you want a croissant, and it might only be 1 in 10 times that someone goes, actually yes, but they wouldn't have otherwise ordered that croissant. And that's the same. It's far easier to upsell different products or resell products and services to your existing customer, and it's actually far more cost effective to do that than look for new customers as well, because marketing is expensive and time consuming. You're working on that lead, it take a long time to get that person in. They don't already have that trust factor with you. Whereas if you can go back and make more, so we look at that analysis as well, as to say, well, if this customer bought this product from you, what would happen if they also bought one of these? Amazon's another brilliant example. Customers bought this, frequently bought, and then there's a big list of other things that have a sort of half a synergy with the thing you just bought. And 9 times out of 10, you'll add another thing to your basket. It's money you wouldn't otherwise have spent.
Yeah. What do you think is the number one area that's neglected, in finances, that's neglected by business owners? What do you think most of them overlook?
I think generally it's a bit of a sort of generic cop-out statement maybe, but I think it's information. That's the thing that's most neglected. I think everything that they're given generally is in hindsight, so it's almost irrelevant. It can be anything up to a year and 9 months old by the time they get it, and it's just too late to really do anything with. All they're really being told is what tax they need to pay. I mean, lots of the presentations and things I do, the first thing I usually cover is an element of the jargon. So to explain to people actually what is your turnover, what is your gross profit, what's your gross profit margin, what do these terms mean? Because then, rather than sort of sitting glazed over in the meeting with their accountant, that they'll take a little bit more from it. The same with terms, I referenced debtors earlier. That's a very important element. Who still owes you money? But if your accountant says, oh, and by the way, you've got 20,000 in debtors, but you don't actually know what debtors means, and you don't feel comfortable to ask the question, that piece of information is just not going to stick with you, really.
No, I think you're right. Okay, now I want to ask you a question, which is one of my pet hates, so I'm going to ask it, but I'm going to try and be very politically correct in the way I ask this question. All these bookkeeping software packages that have been purchased, there are a few names floating around. I won't mention any just in case I get into trouble, but they are my pet hate. Not because they're a competition to me, because they're not. I don't make bookkeeping spreadsheets at all. Well, I made 1 or 2, but not many. But they seem to promise the earth. Just click this button and it does your tax return. Just click this button and it does all your invoicing. And that, as far as I'm concerned, is an absolute, it's completely false at best, a lie at worst. But how do you find when people approach you? Because a lot of those software packages almost suggest that you don't actually need an accountant, just click the buttons and it does everything for you. But you and I know, well, I hope you know, I hope I'm right in saying that's a lot of rubbish. Do you get people overestimating what those can do for them?
Do you know what? Not as much. I completely agree with you. I think the marketing effort they're trying to go down is to say, oh, you don't need an accountant. But I don't think many people have bought into that, if I'm completely honest. When we have conversations with people, they are well aware that, whereas you can purchase a piece of software that can process your invoices and your supplier purchase invoices, it can't replace the knowledge that you have for other things you can claim for. So, for example, use of home as office allowance. You know, if you're working from home, there's an allowance you're allowed to claim for your home bills. How can a piece of software work that out for you? It's just a method of processing your income. And actually, we find that when people come to us and they've done their own, people sometimes think that, oh, if they do their own, they probably take a lot more risks and put a lot of things through it. We usually find it's the opposite, because when they do their own, they only literally claim for what they have paid out. They don't realise that there are all these other allowances that they can have that they might not have receipts for, might not have been processed into a piece of software, but you're entitled to those allowances, and we adjust them at the end of the year. So yeah, nothing can be done for you, because the important thing is that it's the right solution for that customer, and every business is different. So no piece of software can account for that, really, making sure that it's covering all allowances. It hasn't had a conversation with you to establish what is the most tax efficient way for you to do things, or how is the most tax efficient way for you to structure your company, or what actually do you do? Because one of the first questions I ask, say if I'm reviewing a junior's work to establish whether they've claimed everything that they can claim for, is I say, what does the customer do? Because if the customer is a photographer, or they're a painter and decorator, or they're a taxi driver, or they're a consultant, the things they can claim for are very different. A photographer can claim for a camera. A taxi driver would struggle to justify that. There's no cut and dry, well, these are all the things that you're allowed to claim for, and these are the things you're not, or these are the things you can claim part of, part personally, part business. That has to be based on knowledge, and sometimes industry knowledge as well, to understand what things are exclusively for business for that customer, and that varies. So I haven't yet seen a piece of software ask an individual what it is they do for a living before processing the receipts. You still need an account. You might be able to do more of the processing yourself. My personal opinion is that's probably a bit of a waste of time. You should be focusing on growing your business and let somebody else do that side of things. But it's certainly not going to do it for you from beginning to end.
I know. Because I mean, when they did the whole making tax digital thing, someone said to me, "So you're going to close your business down?" I said, "Well, why?" And they said, "Well, people won't use spreadsheets." I said to them, "In my entire career, I've made 4 bookkeeping spreadsheets. One was for my mother, and one was for myself, and 2 were for 2 businesses that I don't even know if they're still going. It was so long ago, and you just." I mean, I don't make bookkeeping ones, but what I have noticed is ever since Making Tax Digital, a lot of people have moved from their own spreadsheets onto these different software packages. I'm getting more requests to actually analyze that data, because they're not getting the reports they want out of that software. So they're exporting masses of CSV data, sending it to me saying, "Can you tell me what this says?" And so actually, I think a lot of these programs have actually taken away a lot of control and a lot of the transparency from the people, from the business owners, and left them a little bit in the dark. And now they're kind of going, "But I thought this would solve my problems." It's not. It's just not telling me what I want to know.
That's exactly it, yeah. And that's I think the major strength of spreadsheets is that they are entirely bespoke. Start with a blank Excel sheet and you tell it what it is you want to know, or you do if that's beyond our skill sets to do so. With a piece of software, there is always a starting point that's very generic. They call it chart of accounts. So they're making assumptions as to what it is you as the business owner wants to see, and not accounting for the fact that every business is different. And I also think it's very complex. Maybe an accountant might be able to get the software to produce some more complex reports than an end user might be. And that's sometimes because we're actually given special dashboards that are different to what the end user will see. But even then, 9 times out of 10, what we do is convert it to a spreadsheet. Because it's much easier format for people to see as well. It's all in one place. I'd far rather have one spreadsheet that gives the outcome and can be converted into colours and charts and things like that than a long piece of data that's been exported from a piece of software that is very difficult to understand, or actually it might end up being a combination of 50 reports, whereas an Excel spreadsheet can bring it all together into one and add information that's non-financial. So you want to also include in your dashboard of information, you might want to look at your sort of marketing statistics as well. That is going to be a different piece of software. That will be a CRM system or something, and it won't be part of your accounting software. But again, you end up with multiple pieces of information, whereas a spreadsheet can give you one with everything on it that you need to see, usually in a lot easy to read way. The other area as well where we found spreadsheets really useful is to bridge the gap, because there's a lot of software now that needs to integrate in order for it to save the business owner time or be as efficient as it can be. We need to get information from a till system into an accounting software. We need to get information from there are pieces of software out there where you can photograph receipts and it will convert it into a CSV document, but that document then needs to get into the accounting software, and there has to be some process of converting that in the meantime, or mapping it, as you would say, to make sure that it goes in. So it's never quite as straightforward as it just talks directly. There's always something that involves a spreadsheet. Ironically, you go back to basics.
Yeah, well, people thought they were done with me, but I'm still going to be around for a while.
Absolutely.
One last thing, Joe, we're running out of time. I just want to ask you, just to recap, as far as if there are any people out there who have an accountant who they see once a year and they want to get more, what is it that you offer over and above just basically completing the compliance side as far as HMRC is concerned?
So I think what we look for is we look for clients that are looking for a bespoke solution. So, for example, people come to us all the time and say, oh, what software do you use? Because my accountant insists that I use X. I insist I use Sage, insist I use Xero, or whatever. We don't do that. What we do is we look at the client's requirements and then we make recommendations, because for some clients, a spreadsheet is best. For some clients, if they're, say, traveling internationally and they need access to their books all the time, well, Xero is brilliant for that because it's online. You can access it from an internet cafe if you want to. You don't have to have information stored anywhere. For other clients where there's sort of stock control, complex, big, heavy reports that they need, it might be Sage. And there also might be customers where just traditionally their in-house bookkeeper person is used to using a certain piece of software, and we'll work with that. That's absolutely fine. And the same with the information back. We don't do a structured, well, this is the management report we provide because this is the one that drops out the software at touch of a button. We say, well, what information do you need as a business owner? And obviously we can help guide them as to what might be useful for them to see, or they might already have something in mind. So it's really bespoke advice. Like, do we deal with clients who just need a once a year service and want to pay minimal fees for that? Yes, absolutely, because you don't want to overcharge those people for these bells and whistles that actually they're not going to use. But can we also cater for the ones that want really in-depth business consultancy? Yeah, we can. And we just work that into a fixed fee, pay monthly price, so they know exactly where they stand. And again, I think what's great for lots of our clients is that they can benefit from my expertise in business generally, because I've bought and sold businesses. I've built businesses in other areas, not just in accountancy. I deal with property. I've got a few buy-to-let properties myself, so I know about the tax strategies around that. So I can bring that to the table. I don't anymore do the day-to-day work. Our accountants, our compliance accountants do that. They'll work out how much tax you've got to pay. But we also have members of staff along with myself who can advise on the rest of the things people want. So we're looking for clients really that want more from their existing accountant, but still with certainty of what they're going to pay, pay monthly, no unexpected bill because they've come and had a 3-hour meeting. I want to have those things because I'm genuinely interested in what they're doing. That's why I became an accountant, because I love to hear about people who have gone out, built their own businesses, how they got into it, what their eventual aims are, and how we can help them to get there. That's really what's interesting about what we do.
Well, it is very much so. So, Joe, thank you very much. Hopefully now when people meet you at networking events, their eyes won't glaze over. And hopefully people meet me at networking events, they won't ask if I do accounting spreadsheets. So we've probably killed 2 birds with 1 stone in this. But thank you very much for chatting to me. I do appreciate it.
No problem at all. Thank you for having me, Richard. I appreciate it. Love speaking to you.